Every morning across the Western world, millions of teenagers step into a crowded, buzzing public school hallway. Millions of others enter the hushed, orderly corridors of a uniform-clad Christian academy. We often assume the public building provides a neutral baseline of facts, while the private building layers on a specific bias of faith. In reality, both systems operate from a specific, non-neutral starting point. This brings us to epistemology, the philosophical framework we use to decide what counts as truth. It is the invisible yardstick used to measure everything from science to social justice. Spending thousands of hours in a classroom installs the foundational code for how a child interprets every event and relationship in their life. For centuries in the West, education and the church were a single unit. Literacy was taught primarily as a tool to access religious texts, making the local parish school an extension of the sanctuary. In the 19th century, educational reformers like Horace Mann pushed for a shift. The state took control to create a common school system designed to forge a shared civic identity among a rapidly diversifying population. These early state schools maintained a clear Protestant flavor, utilizing the Bible as a primary text and beginning each day with mandatory morning prayer. That baseline vanished in the 1960s. A series of Supreme Court rulings officially secularized the public classroom, removing prayer and religious oversight to ensure state neutrality in a pluralistic society. This vacuum triggered the 1970s evangelical boom. Parents poured millions into private academies, seeking a classroom where their children's faith would be reinforced rather than challenged by the state. This historical tug-of-war fractured the shared baseline of Western truth, creating two distinct educational ecosystems that rarely communicate with one another. The science lab is the primary point of friction. Public schools teach through methodological naturalism, framing evolution as the unifying theory of life. Conversely, Christian schools often present science as the study of a creator's handiwork, teaching young earth creationism or intelligent design as the primary reality. In history class, the narratives diverge again. Public education frames the human story as a secular struggle for rights and progress. Christian schools often teach providential history, where God is seen as an active participant directing the rise and fall of nations. The most volatile clashes occur over morality and human sexuality. Public schools generally adopt a pragmatic, LGBTQ+ inclusive approach to health education, while Christian schools maintain an abstinence-based ethic rooted in traditional biblical gender roles. These subjects serve as competing blueprints, each building a specific vision of why the student exists and what their ultimate purpose is in the universe. Critics of Christian education often describe these schools as socioeconomically homogeneous bubbles that leave students ill-equipped to handle the friction of a diverse world. Christian educators view the environment differently. They call it a greenhouse. The goal is to protect a fragile worldview during its formative years, strengthening the plant until it can survive hostile cultural weather. Both systems carry a heavy human toll. Public teachers face massive bureaucratic burdens, while Christian teachers often accept lower pay for their ministry work. Meanwhile, students in both environments develop a sharp sensitivity to institutional hypocrisy. Navigating the pluralism of a public hallway or the protected enclosure of a private academy requires a high level of psychological resilience from the modern student. Sociologists fear this educational segregation will lead to cultural balkanization, a society divided into two tribes. However, a state monopoly on education risks authoritarian indoctrination, forcing a single mode of thought. The opposing extreme risks total societal disintegration, where citizens have no shared civic foundation. A free society requires the tension of both, the public school producing the good citizen, and the private school producing the faithful servant. Despite billions spent on these institutional blueprints, the results are notoriously unpredictable. Public schools, for instance, frequently graduate students who become deeply committed, resilient Christians. Conversely, the most rigorous Christian academies often produce some of the most vocal secularists and critics of religion in the next generation. This institutional leakage suggests that the classroom is secondary to the domestic environment. Data shows that parental habits and conversations at the kitchen table are a stronger predictor of a child's permanent worldview than any textbook. The state and the church will continue their war for the minds of the next generation, But classroom desks are ultimately less influential than the chairs at the dinner table.